All right, guys, just want to welcome back to the Everything Cultural Podcast. Today, me and Nick will be doing the 2023 Camellia Bowl, Saturday, December 23rd, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN. Arkansas State -1. Crampton Bowl in Montgomery, the site of this one. Looking at these offenses, these are two pretty evenly dealt teams. Arkansas State, you want to start with them, 28 points per contest. This is a team that is led by quarterback Jalen Rayner, a freshman. 2,300 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. He certainly has helped on the ground as well with 324 in 5 scores. The running game led by Jaquez Cross and Zach Wallace. These guys both have 556 and then 688 yards, a combined 13 touchdowns. They're both putting up over 50 yards per contest. Some pretty evenly met touches there. Obviously, those two backs and the quarterback Renier both average over 10 attempts per game. So they're trying to run the football. 4.2 yards per carry average, though, isn't all that stout. Corey Rucker, a very talented pass catcher, 31 grabs for 598. Is yet to find the end zone, though. Jeff Foreman has 521 and 4 scores, and then Courtney Jackson has 7 touchdowns, 658. Those three pass catchers they all have over 17 yards per catch. Obviously, some big plays through the air. What do you make of an offense here, Nick, that certainly is trying to go with some balance, but on the ground it doesn't always seem to be working out for them?
They've struggled on the ground this year, which has hurt their balance opportunity. It's a very interesting offense, 27.8 points per game, 4.21 yards per attempt on the ground, and 5.84 yards per play total for this team. The quarterback play, Rayner has been solid. The 58% comp rate is not great, but 2,300 yards, 15 touchdowns, 6 picks is not terrible. He's also got that dual threat ability, which I think is good for this offense. He's solid, 324 in the 5 scores on the ground. At times, he's good in the short range. Courtney Jackson's a great player, 658, 17.3 in the 7 scores. Rucker, nearly 20 yards per grab. Foreman, over 20 yards per grab. Rucker, hopefully he breaks into the end zone at the end of the season, maybe get himself 1 touchdown, 600 yards receiving. Is nothing to sneeze at. For Foreman as well is a solid number. This offense, we expected it to be a little bit better. It's been not terrible, but it's also just kind of been weird because you look at the number, like 27.8 points per game is not bad, but the 4.21 yards per attempt on the ground is not fantastic, and that does come from some of the running back not really having the best production at time. Cross and his partner Wallace do not have the best production. They do have 13 touchdowns between the two of them, which is not a bad total either. This is an offense that's very middle of the road with an opportunity here against this NIU defense.
The Red Wolves, though, they do have potential to explode. They torched an FCS opponent in September for 345, 232 against LA Lafayette, and then against Texas State, 284 and 7 touchdowns. That's pretty absurd. 20 touchdowns on the year. So a big chunk of their production came in that one game. They do have a very good center in Jacob Bayer. He's a phenomenal player for them. The rest of the offensive line, certainly not as good, especially on that right side. Look at the NIU offense. This is a unit that's going to be without their top pass catcher, Trayvon Rudolph, and their second leading pass catcher. He's also missed a lot of time. He hasn't played since the first month of the season, and he's still the second leading pass catcher. So that's certainly a big concern. Davis Patterson, Grayson Barnes, Chris Carter, some of these guys that have very limited production are going to be expected to step up in this game. It's going to be about the run game, though. Ontario Brown, great player, 1,100-plus rushing, 10 touchdowns. And then Gavin Williams has been, a productive number 2 with 448 in 3 scores. Rocky Lombardi, this is a guy who, the former Michigan State transfer, certainly just trying to make do with what he's got. He does have 6 rushing touchdowns, only 10 through the air, 5 picks, well under 100 80 passing yards per game for Lombardi. So he's certainly just going to be expected to be a game manager. They won the last 2 games in a row with him only completing 9 passes in each game. So they're going to be looking to run the ball in this game, Nick, and they have the best player to do it, probably one of the top in the MAC in Brown.
This is an offense that's not fantastic as well. Another, middle of the road offense here, 25.3 points per game, but a much better offense on the ground, which I think is the key here. 5.05 yards per attempt, solid number there. 5.76 yards per play. Again, I said this in an earlier episode. When I see the disparity like that, it's clear that the passing attack has been the problem. The running attack has not been an issue for this team. Lombardi, not very accurate, 57% comp rate. He's doing what he can, though. Like you said, he's just more of a game manager at this point. 2,000 yards passing, 10 picks, 5 interceptions, just middle of the road. Losing Rudolph is definitely, a disappointing thing for this team, but his average per catch was only 10.8, so he definitely wasn't super efficient with his grabs. He did get a ton of targets, double the next leading receiver in Ratisky, who had 21 catches, 13.9, or 3 319 yards, 15.2, and 2 scores. Grayson Barnes is a solid player of 317, 17.6, and 4 receiving touchdowns. Like you said, Antonio Brown is the best player on the field for either team, 6.2 yards per carry, 10 scores, 1,100 yards on the ground. Solid numbers there. Gavin Williams is a pretty good guy to have behind him. Williams is also involved in the pass-catching game with 22 grabs for 141 yards. This offense isn't super balanced either. They're trying to find a way to get balanced. They're a lot closer, right? The disparity there is simply smaller, 25.3 points per game. It's going to rely on Brown, though, to pick up a lot of the slack in this bowl game.
Good offensive line, though. Pete Niagara, center, he's sound. Right tackle, Nolan Potter's terrific. John Champy at right guard, he's a really good pass blocker. I mean, this is a pretty sound offensive line. Thomas Hammock, that is certainly preaches physicality and running the football. So that's going to be the name of the game here in this one. And you just scroll down to the defenses, there's certainly going to be some advantages here you can talk about. And that's the points per game disparity. Arkansas State giving up 10 more points per contest than NIU. You want to start with some of the guys on their defense. And, they're going to be without their second leading tackler and freshman linebacker Javonte Mackey. Charles Wilkes, though, he's still expected to play with 88 of his own. Malachi Starker, he's a veteran linebacker expected to fill in. Kevon Crawford has been a sound defensive end. Thurman Gaithers has 12 TFL. The aforementioned Crawford with 10.5 of his own. I mean, they certainly do a solid job here of getting in the backfield, 80 tackles for loss as a team. And, they're certainly, Nate Marty, the defensive tackle, leading the way with 6 stacks. They have 24 as a team. This is a pretty good offensive line, though, so they certainly want to try to create here, and I think they have a good opportunity to do so. But for the most part, they haven't exactly been stout against the run. Last 3 games, they've given up 170 plus, and over the last 2 months, it's been kind of an issue for them, especially that game against Troy where they gave them 350 plus. In the 34-point downfall there, Arkansas State, their defense isn't all that great, but their ability to create some plays in the backfield by some of these individuals, Nick, might be a difference maker.
This defense has given up 31.2 points per game. That's a little skewed. They did give up 73 points week 1 to Oklahoma on the road, 4.76 yards per attempt on the ground, and 6.19 yards per play. So there certainly is some things here. 23 touchdowns, 6 interception ratio is not great for the secondary. This front part of this defense does have some solid players. Losing a guy like Mackey obviously is disappointing because he has the second leading tackler, a really solid player in the backfield. Losing him is a problem. Charles Weekleys is going to play 88 total tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks for him. Good numbers there. Thurman Gaithers is also a solid player at left defensive edge. He comes off the edge pretty quickly with the 47 total tackles, 12 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Kevon Crawford, 44 total tackles, 10.5 tackles for loss, 5.5 sacks. As well, Nate Marty is another solid player who's been a rotational piece, the transfer at nose tackle. He's been good, 35 total tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 6 sacks. So there is some serious production in the backfield. Like you said, they can get after the quarterback, which will be the key to success here is can they make the NIU quarterback uncomfortable in Lombardi and make him make mistakes considering he's a game manager type quarterback. I think they can have a lot of success if they do that.
The secondary has allowed a lot of big plays this year, limited ball production, only 6 picks. Eddie Smith is a good safety, as is Justin Parks. Sammy Johnson at corners had a solid season. But they're not expected to throw the ball a whole lot. They got to be disciplined with their eyes. Play action can be really killer for this secondary. The most important thing to watch there. You'll get NIU, giving them only 21 points per game on the, per contest. They've been pretty sound against the run themselves this year. Certainly have had some troubles. Central Michigan took them for a spin. Toledo had some success early on in the season. But for the most part of the back half of the year, really since the beginning of October, they've been sound. They've only allowed over 100 yards 4 times. They've only allowed over 110 twice. And the teams that were able to do that ran it for 40-plus times. So you're really going to have to earn your yards against this run defense, it seems. They've allowed 20 touchdowns this season. They got some standouts of their own, though. Rasheem Thomas has been good. James Esther up front. George Gums. They have some solid defensive linemen overall. And, the defensive end Thomas does lead them with 68 tackles. Jaden Dolphin and Tyler Jackson, the linebackers, following him up. So the middle presence by their backers isn't all that great. It's really about this defensive line. But they've been good stopping the run, Nick, and I think that's certainly an edge they want to try and take advantage of.
Certainly an opportunity for this defense to take advantage of that great edge they have. 21.2 points per game, solid number there. 4.22 yards per attempt on the ground. Like you said, that's a very solid number for this running defense. They're strong against that. They're also really solid against the pass against the secondary in a second, 11 touchdowns and 9 interception ratio. Solid ratio there. for this unit, 5.04 yards per play total. I like this front part of this defense. They're very physical. They get into the backfield when they need to. They have a great opportunity here. They lost only one player to opt out, someone from the secondary in terms of defensively, so there are some solid players. Rasheed Thomas, their leading tackler, 68 total tackles, 7 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks. He's a great player coming off that left edge. I like to see him dominate against this offensive line for Arkansas State. He's a really good player. There's some other talented players here. James Esther, 48 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks for him. George Gums, 32 total tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Roy Williams, 23 total tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Seriously nice production there. There are some solid pieces on this front defensive line that can get in the backfield and wreak havoc for this Arkansas State offense.
Yeah, the Huskies are very good in the back end. 10th or 8th nationally, that is, and 10 plus passing yard plays allowed. I mean, it's very sound. They don't give up a lot of yards through the air. That's something that they also think they have a big edge in. Only 9 picks, allowed 11 touchdowns they've given up. There's some games throughout the most part of the year. They're giving up less than 200 yards in most of the games this season. They've only allowed over 200 only twice this year. That's pretty ridiculous. Very impressive mark there. They certainly want to look to guys like Nate Velarchi, Tyrus McCarroll, Javon Bird, who's been really good at corner. So secondary is certainly pretty good. Final thoughts and predictions. For Arkansas State, Rayner and his wide receivers need to try and navigate this tough matchup. The D does a solid job creating negative plays. I think for NIU, you're probably going to feed Alonzo Brown in a pretty good matchup. They're much better on third down offense, and they have a better defense. This seems like a game they should probably win pretty handily. NIU, right? Arkansas State is given the 1-point edge, and I can certainly understand that with the ability for NIU to potentially be completely one-dimensional in this game. With not much production at all at pass catcher, whatever, a below-average quarterback. I'm still going to take them, though, 34-26. I think they're going to do a good job running the ball in this one, and I think their defense, they're going to step up when it matters most. And they're not going to give up much through the air. 34-26 for me. Obviously, very close line, but I think the Huskies should be able to take care of business.
I think the Huskies should win this game as well. I think it's interesting for Arkansas State. Butch Jones, it looked like he was on a bit of a hot seat. He gets his first bowl game at Arkansas State. They like I said, they lost the first game 73-0 at Oklahoma. Obviously, they weren't expected to be competitive with Oklahoma, but that was a bad beatdown. They struggled at other points this season, but he got them bowl eligible. That's a big step in the right direction for the former Tennessee coach and Alabama assistant, who now has been taking over at Arkansas State for a few years. NIU would love to win this game. They're a solid team in the MAC, nothing crazy, but they've had a decent enough season at this point to get here. They beat Boston College, kick off the season on the road. That was a pretty solid win for this team. They dominated teams like Akron and Western Michigan on the tail end of the season, so they have had a decent season in those regards. I like this NIU team a lot, and they're a solid team under head coach Thomas Hammock. And they have a great opportunity here to get a bowl win, add one to the notch, and move forward in the MAC. I like this team on offense to run the ball very efficiently here. Arkansas State team, I expect a close game. I said 24-20. It could be really close at that point. I think this is, essentially a pick 'em with the 1-point line. I just like the Huskies in this one.
It's going to be it for today's episode, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. See you next time.
Ugh.